Hello everyone, and today we're talking about Buster Blader, the big man himself. It's been a little while since he's been on the channel, and that's purely because the most recent developments inside of the meta really aren't working in its favor, I'll be perfectly honest. So we've had to change up the list quite a bit. Now, I don't know if this list is quite finished yet. It was sort of rather difficult to make a list work, but as soon as we got to this, I think as soon as we built this, we went on like a 5-win streak. And we were sort of experiencing a little bit of sort of consistent success from then on. The deck does function very differently to what we were playing in the past, so I am going to go through card for card at the end. But the focus of the deck is shifting to where it's a lot more versatile in that you're not so sort of focused heavily on monster removal and monster negation, because that's all the meta was, right? Until very recently. It was just monsters, monsters, monsters. Whereas now, with runics, labyrinths, revive trap tricks, floodgates, all of this nonsense that was always technically around, but now is more prominent than ever, there's going to need to be a lot of adjustments that need to be made in order to make these types of strategies viable. So, what is the idea behind the deck? Basically, you're relying on not only your regular Buster Blader combo, which we're going to show and we're going to talk about, that's fine. We're also going to be relying more heavily upon the Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, which we were not playing in the past, at least not in the most recent versions. We're going to be relying more heavily upon the Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss, using things like Jet Synchron to make it more feasible, and we're also going to be relying more heavily upon a new monster that we're including, the Chaos Hunter. This is going to be our big bad counter to things like Runic, things like Branded really don't do very well against this. It stops a lot of branded cards, it stops Block Dragon and Adamantipator's, it stops things like Taya and Shizao and Sword Souls. This has a lot of practical applications in the metagame. There's a lot of cards that need to banish, and this only locks your opponent, so you yourself can still banish cards. So Chaos Hunter has been exceptionally useful. I love this card. I'm planning on playing this in more and more decks as I go on, but for now we're going to be debuting it in Buster Blader. So I'm not going to take up too much more time at the start here. The detailed card for card profile will be at the end after the gameplay, so stick around, watch the game so you can sort of see how the variation of the deck works. I wanted to get replays that show off the newer portions of the deck, so it's not going to be so much focused on the prologue and your standard line of play. It's going to be more focused on what the deck is doing outside of that to maintain its place within the meta, because this is a cool strategy and all, and it's definitely very strong in terms of locking out all your opponent's monsters, but it's not going to be enough to win every single game. The deck needs to have versatility in order to survive, and that's what I aim to show off here today. So if that's the sort of thing you're into, if you want to see us take some of these classic decks using some of the more famous monsters from the anime and make them competitive and functional within the metagame, then feel free to subscribe. You know, we cover these things quite a lot. This deck in particular has seen a lot of changes and play throughout the months, so that's something you're interested in, feel free to subscribe and like the video, and you can even look back to our previous videos on decks like this. We have a lot of different builds we've talked about in the past. But yes, I'm not going to take up too much more of your time here at the start. Let's get into game number 1. Alrighty, we've got game number 1 lined up, and what a hand we've got here. We're going to go for our Whelp right off the bat, but we get Impermed. Now that effectively means the Buster Blader part of the deck is dead. I don't care what kind of gimmicks you're playing. At this point, any Buster Blader deck, regardless of how pure it claims to be, is going to be struggling. So instead we're going to go into Linkuriboh, and luckily we've got our Fusion Destiny here for our Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer. We're really lucky top deck, and we've got a solid hand of interruptions here. So we're going to see what our opponent is actually playing. Looks like they're playing the Adventure something. So we're going to be hitting this with Maxi right off the bat here. Maxi is going to be a lot more useful than the Effect Veiler. As soon as our opponent special summons a monster, we can bring out our Chaos Hunter. So that's going to be amazing. Here's the Fateful Adventure. We decide we're going to hold off on the DPE. We want to see what sort of avenue our opponent goes through before trying to make a play. They go into Kit here, which locks them out of the Rite of Aramis here, which was a very interesting play. The Fateful Adventure will grab them the Draco back, but the Kit will search their deck for a branded spell or trap and then return a card from their deck back to the hand. So they grab their branded Fusion, which they can now use, of course. They're going to summon 2 cards out to the field. Now, what you need to be aware of is Chaos Hunter is a when effect, which means it doesn't always trigger in response to every sort of summon, but here we can discard the Buster Blader that we drew, which is useless in our hand, and we're just going to summon this guy out to the field while also negating our opponent's Lebellion. Now, normally Chaos Hunter would be able to stop Called by the Grave. Unfortunately, he's chaining it to our summon, so we don't get that benefit, unfortunately. But what does Chaos Hunter do against Branded? It stops Mirror Jade, it stops Branded in Red, it stops Branded Banishment, it stops the Tragedy Recycle, it stops lots of things within Branded here. So he's going to summon Mirror Jade and do what with it? He's very, very tied up here, so our opponent's in a very tough spot. He cannot use the effect of Mirror Jade to banish our cards because of Chaos Hunter. Well, how's he going to destroy Chaos Hunter? He's going to have to attack with Mirror Jade. But he can't do that because we've got Linkuriboh. We've got our opponent locked down in a position where they don't have a ton of options. They're just going to try and swing straight in here. We're going to tribute the Linkuriboh, get him reduced to 0. You could argue he could attack first with Kit and then do it that way, but we just pop Kit off of DPE and he gets nowhere anyway. So there was no way our opponent could really have made very much headway. We had to say getting rid of the Kit there is going to be a little bit more valuable than the Fateful Adventure, purely because we want to push for some real damage here. Dasher in the graveyard, being able to summon cards that you draw, is also very useful in this deck because we're playing a lot of level 7 and higher monsters. So Vishuda coming out to the field is very, very useful, and you're going to see why in just a moment here. We're going to normal summon our Jet and then link off into the Monk of the Tenyi, allowing our Vishuda to bounce that Mirror Jade back to his extra deck without needing to destroy it, meaning he does not get to nuke our field at the end of the turn. We want to keep this Chaos Hunter. This was going to set up our, Memories. Yeah, I couldn't remember the name of that card. Destruction Sword Memories into the graveyard so we could use it to start fusion summoning, because remember, we already had Busted Blader, we already had a dragon, so we could potentially fusion summon to negate the effects of all of his dragons, like, you know, Lebellion, Albaz, all of these cards. So no, we were set up very nicely there. We didn't quite have lethal on this turn. We might have actually with the Protector's effect. 25, 25, 4... yeah, we would have had lethal actually, yeah, because the Protector Whelp would have dealt 2,800 points of damage off of our Buster Blader Fusion monster, so no, that was lethal anyway, so it was. So yeah, pretty good showing of what the deck can do. It didn't show off the Buster Blader stuff itself, of course, we already sort of know how that engine works. I wanted to show what the deck does outside of that, as well as the benefits of Chaos Hunter. I'm not going to ramble, let's get into game number 2. Alrighty, getting into our second game here. We're going to be going second, which usually isn't that great, especially when you're up against a trap-based strategy. We decide to use the Infinite Impermanence here purely because this Ariane can generate a lot of card advantage. We don't want it special summoning the other level 4 and then get searching for cards. So our opponent basically just sets free and passes. Now, we typically don't deal very well with back row. We're going to go Vishuda here off the bat. We are going to get negated and take 2,000 points damage. Our opponent's then going to chain Welcome Labyrinth and Labyrinth Barrage. So this is a combo that they use quite consistently. So Labyrinth Barrage will copy the effect of the last trap card that was activated. Because the last trap activated was Welcome Labyrinth, he gets to summon an additional Labyrinth monster straight from the deck. Our Vishuda gets negated and he gets to summon out 2 monsters to the field, but without any normal trap cards in his field, these monsters don't have very much impact. So we're going to be able to take out one of his cards, and then we are unfortunately just going to have to pass it back to him. We have 2 copies of Trap Trick set, which means we at least have some options coming up. Our opponent's going to reset their Grave Digger's Trap Hole, they're going to set 2 more cards and basically just get straight back to work. The Ascend of the Thunder, when destroyed, will heal you by 5,000 life, so we sort of actually earned more life points out of that turn than we lost. We're going to set Prologue here to our field, just so that we're ready to use it when the opportunity arises, and we draw straight into our Whelp, which is amazing. We're going to activate the Vishuda, we know we're going to get negated, we just want to get rid of that trap card. He's going to chain to that the Welcome Labyrinth and the Labyrinth Barrage once more. That means 2 more summons straight out from his deck. So 2 more Labyrinth monsters. He summons out another Ariana, as well as a second lovely Labyrinth. But again, without any normal trap cards, our opponent isn't in the greatest of positions. They don't have their field spell yet. He does search for it here, so he's setting himself up for next turn. We're going to normal summon our Whelp. Whelp's going to grab the extra deck lock because we didn't really have anything else worth grabbing. We're going to link off into Linkaribo, so now we can use our prologue of the Destruction Swordsman. Using it as well as memories, we're going to banish memories from the graveyard as well as our Buster Blader and the Dragon in order to fusion summon out Buster Blader, the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman, and then our prologue is going to bring out the Buster Dragon, changing all of his monsters to dragons and changing all of his dragons to defense, and we get an additional 1000 attack and defense per card. So we deal massive piercing damage over our opponent here, and none of his monsters can activate their effects on the field this turn, which does limit his plays quite heavily. He's not able to recycle his cards quite as easily, and our opponent actually goes into Bagooska here. Now Bagooska is pretty similar in that the Buster Blader as well as number 41, neither of these cards are actually negating effects. All they're doing is preventing the activation of effects, or in this case negating the activated effects of, which means the passive restrictions of our cards are all still in place. Now we're going to chain to the summon of the Tapir our Chaos Hunter, as well as being able to use Chaos Hunter's discard cost to set up our Buster Log if we weren't being negated. Just a fun little thing to note for the future. But we do get an additional summon off of this, and we do have some easy methods for getting rid of this Bagooska. We top deck into Fusion Destiny, which is huge of course. We decide to link off using our Fusion monster into the Protector Whelp of the Destruction Swordsman. You could argue that this maybe isn't the greatest play, because technically speaking, we could have just used Chaos Hunter and our Linkaribo to go into this guy and win through effect damage, but we didn't know what this face down card was, at least I don't think we did. So we wanted to just be careful basically and play around any potential back row. You know, all it takes is a compulsory evacuation device and that plan goes down in flames. So now what we're doing is we're going to spin the Bagooska back to the extra deck here, just so we can effectively use our Fusion Destiny. Fusion Destiny then sending from the deck to the graveyard the materials, bringing out the DPE, go into battle phase, take out the Lovely Labyrinth, and then we take out his life points. Simple as that. We're just winning the grind game against Labyrinth, breaking them down bit by bit, shuffling them in, negating them. Typically, again, this is part of this is one of the decks that we're struggling against in terms of the fact they're not really utilizing monster effects all of the time. It's not core to their, well, it is core to their strategy, sorry, but it's not. Their strategy isn't unidimensional in that they also gain a lot of advantage simply by playing trap cards, which we would naturally have no control over. However, factoring in things like DPE, which can pop cards, Unicorn, which can spin cards, Chaos Hunter, which will prevent the activation of many cards, as many cards banish for cost or banish as part of resolution, which is prevented as part of Chaos Hunter's effect. So the deck has a lot more versatility against the current metagame in this form than it did in its previous form, the Synchro-based version, which was really good at dealing with monster-based strategies. But that's game number 2, let's get into a third. Alrighty, taking a second shot at recording game number 3 because my footage corrupted. Very simple opening here. We're going to start with our Whelp, searching for our prologue. Then we're going to link 2 off into Verte Anaconda. Verte Anaconda, of course, getting our DPE, where it would if we weren't getting negated. So that's basically the idea of the deck, is you want to grab prologue and have it activatable, as well as having DPE. That's like the core sort of mechanic of it, because DPE helps you deal with a lot of back row based strategies, whereas your Buster combo basically locks your opponent out of using monsters. So it's a pretty interesting sort of synergy between the two. We're going to fusion summon out our Buster Blader here. Of course, we have this activatable. No DPE, unfortunately, because of that imperm, so we're not in the strongest of positions, but we're not terribly off either. We're going up against Sword Soul. Sword Soul is normally a pretty easy win with this deck, because you can stop them from summoning their tokens quite easily. But our opponent, unfortunately, they just happen to have the droplet, and made life very difficult for us here by negating our Buster Dragon and Buster Blader. They're going to summon out a token with their Taya. When the Boxia gets the option to bounce 2 back into our deck, basically. The Taya would also Foolish Burial one of their worms. We're going to stop that from happening using Ash Blossom. But we've already paid 5,000 life points in cost between between Verte Anaconda as well as our Ascended Thunder. So all our opponent needs to do is summon another monster to win the game, and they have the Summit in hand. 1,300 points of damage, and then 23 to the face. So a very swift end, unfortunately. I wanted to include this because it shows the simplicity of the Buster engine as well. It would have been quite an easy win for us, except I had to drop it. And that's part of why, again, I wanted to show that because it's part of why you need to have these backup options available in these decks, because you're not always going to be in a position where your Buster Lock does the job. And that's always been the case. That's why we've always paired it with something rather than just playing it by itself. Playing it by itself has never been the way, it will never be the way. It's a strong strategy, but it only locks out a small portion of the game. An important portion, don't get me wrong, a very important portion, but a small portion that can inevitably be played around. So just bear that in mind. Again, we got unlucky. He had the imperm to stop DPE, he had the droplet to stop the Buster combo. It's not going to happen all the time like that. He got real lucky, and we're simply just going to move on to game number 4. Alrighty, so opening hand here looks very strong, and it almost is. So we're going to send 2 Destiny Heroes to the graveyard to use our Phoenix Enforcer, and we're just going to pass. This was very nearly a good hand, however we need to be able to put either a dragon or memories into the graveyard before we can really rely upon it. It looks like we're playing against a similar-esque strategy to before. Like I said, the whole point of this gameplay is to show off scenarios where the deck struggles and hopefully utilizes its extra resources to secure a win. So that's the idea behind these replays. We're going to use DP in the end phase to secure basically a kill against this absolute king. It's going to get a graveyard effect, but it's whatever, it just stacks the cards on top of the deck. That's not a massive threat to us. It also has a graveyard effect that we will be able to negate no problem. This is interesting because now we can use Dasher in the graveyard to summon a Chaos Hunter preemptively without needing to pay its discard cost, which is very good. Now he tries to use his Absolute King. We decide to Ash this. Whether or not that was the correct play, you can tell me. But Chaos Hunter here is going to be posing a bit of a problem to him because it makes any cards that he would play that would normally banish now unplayable. And we also have DPE. This is quite a strong combo. We decide we're going to quickly just protect our own DPE by popping it and our opponent's compulsory evacuation device. Yes, we don't get a ton of value out of it, but it does mean our DPE isn't getting bounced anywhere anytime soon. The Lord of Heavenly Prisons then is going to come out of the hand and summon itself onto the field, a massive 3k wall. It's going to make it very difficult to get over, and our opponent sets Dogmatica Punishment down to the field straight from their deck. There's not a lot we can do against the wall like that, so we decide we just have to pass. DP does come back yet again, and it has an active target here in the form of the Lord of Heavenly Prisons. It's going to go in the battle phase. We're going to use that opportunity to basically pop a card. He's going to go Dogmatica Punishment now, and he's going to send Psyframe Lord Omega, which is very challenging because he gets the opportunity now to use that Omega to return our Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer back to our extra deck. So that means DPE is out. Now we're going to be struggling a little bit. He's going to be setting Welcome Labyrinth here to his back row, and he can activate it this turn, meaning he's going to be able to summon a Labyrinth monster from the deck. We don't want that to happen, so we're going to negate it using Ash Blossom. So the double Ash in the opening hand wasn't great at the beginning, but it ended up panning out for us. We're dealing with 2 back row cards, 1 card in hand, so in terms of card advantage, we're not doing too bad. We do get our Destiny Hero Dasher back out to the field here off of DPE's effect. Our Buster Whelp gets imperned, but honestly, we don't care about that because all we need to do is put this guy into the graveyard. We already have the prologue in hand, which is perfect. Dynatag's going to boost up our Dasher by 1000. Dasher's going to tribute the prologue to give itself another 1000, and we're going to swing for 4100 attack points. So that we're just trying to get as much damage across the line here because we want to use this prologue to go into a game-winning play on the next turn. Our opponent summons out their Labyrinth Clock. We're going to use our prologue, send the memories, send the Buster Blader, banish the memories to begin the combo, fusion summon out our Buster Blader Destroyer, Swordsman, whatever his name is, a real mouthful. Then we're also going to summon our Buster Dragon. All his monsters will switch to defense. He can't use their effects, no more searching, no more summoning, no more nothing, and that is game. So even in trap-based strategies, the Buster Lock itself still holds weight. They still need their monsters to search for their cards. They still need to extend. The only deck this doesn't really play in against is Runic. We didn't have too many Runic matchups, but that's where Chaos Hunter comes in. If you summon Chaos Hunter, unless they're playing some sort of strange mix, you virtually win that matchup every single time. It's criminal. It's nuts. Like, you will almost always win that matchup, even against mixes like Invoked. Like, what does Invoked Runic do against you? They can't banish for materials off their invocation. They can't do it. So you hold a really strong matchup against Runic using the Chaos Hunter, which is why we're playing it. But there's also a few other cards that you're playing that help you out in that matchup as well. I'm going to stop rambling. We're going to go in and do a card for card deck profile here. So if you're more interested, let's have a listen here and we'll get this sorted. So, Buster Blader. Buster Blader is an interesting one in sort of how we have it built. There are definitely a few changes you can make to this build in terms of customization, but I'm going to cover off how we have it built right now and why we've built it the way we have. So we're going to open up by discussing the hand traps first, like we always do. We play quite a few, which is integral to this version of the deck. We want to play a good solid amount of hand traps just so we have some generic interruption across the board. We of course have the double effect Veiler, the double Max C, the double Ash Blossom. We have the double Call by the Grave, the Crossout Designator, followed by the double Infinite Impermanence. So that's our generic sort of hand trap lineup. I'm not seeing any more. There's a few extra cards you could kind of throw into that category, like maybe 1-for-1 and a second jet. It's up to you if you want to throw them into that category, but I would sort of, that's all the hand traps specifically that we're playing. Now, when it comes to the construction of the main deck itself, we're going to separate it into parts. Number one is the Buster Blader engine. I want to discuss that first for anyone who hasn't played Buster Blader before and has never watched one of my videos on the deck. The Buster Blader engine is really, really simple. You're summoning out the Buster Blader, the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman, and you're summoning the Buster Dragon. How are you doing that? You're activating Prologue of the Destruction Swordsman. It's really simple. Prologue of the Destruction Swordsman will send a Buster Blader, as well as any other Destruction Sword card in your deck, to the graveyard, and then you will summon out the Buster Dragon. So there's one of the boxes ticked. Now, what cards are you sending from the deck to the graveyard? You're either going to send Destruction Sword Memories, or the Buster Whelp of the Destruction Swordsman. Whichever one you have in the graveyard, you just send the other. You want to have a combination of those in the grave. And why are you doing that? Destruction Sword Memories can banish itself from the graveyard to fusion summon using materials in your grave. So if you have a warrior, your Buster Blader, the dragon, which you're sending using Prologue, and you also have a dragon, any dragon, this is just an example. I don't think we play many other dragons, but this is the main one. And if you're a Buster Blader and any dragon, you fusion summon out Buster Blader, the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman. So basically, as part of one chain, you activate Prologue. Let's say you already have Whelp in the grave. You activate Prologue, you send Memories and Buster Blader. You then chain Memories to your Prologue to banish, then chain link 2, you fusion summon. Chain link 1, you summon the Buster Dragon. By the resolution, at the beginning of that chain, you have 0 monsters. By the end of that chain, you have 2 monsters and your opponents are already negated. They cannot respond to you with any of their monster effects. They just can't do it. So that's the beauty behind the chain. It leaves them in a position where they just can't react. So no, that's the idea with that. How does the rest of the deck work then? So it works in... It's pretty interesting in how this works because a lot of these cards are more important in the synchro version of it rather than this version. That's what I'm saying when I don't know if this is completely finished yet. But I feel like every card in here I liked having. So Jet Synchron's a 1-card Verte Anaconda, which is virtually the only reason we're playing it. It's also good for putting certain cards in your hand into the graveyard. You can also generate advantage off of it if you need to discard it off of Chaos Hunter, 1-for-1, anything like that. So it has a few uses in the deck, but it's definitely not mandatory to play. It's just really useful. It being a level 1 tuner as well gives you a lot of synchro options. So ideally, you want to be... Basically, you can normal summon him, use it to go off into Link Rebo, and then using Jet Synchron's effect, you can discard a card to summon Jet back to the field. There's your 2 effect monsters. There's your Verte Anaconda, which is one of the biggest plays in the deck. So Jet Synchron's is a 1-card Verte, and it's a level 1 tuner that recycles itself, so it works really well with all of your level 7s that spam themselves out to the field. It's also summonable off of 1-for-1. The Buster Whelp, we've talked about, on normal summon, you search for the Prologue, that's pretty much it. And it's also a dragon. It's a level 1 tuner, which is handy while you're level 7 non-tuners. So really useful. The Dragon Buster Destruction Sword. Now this one is a bit extra. You don't always use this card. You will basically, if you control both your Buster Dragon and your Buster Blader, the Buster Dragon will equip this card onto your Buster Blader from the graveyard, and as long as this card is a face-up equip spell, your opponent cannot use their extra deck, which is busted. It's really powerful. In this particular version of the deck, you don't often have the ability to extend into this, but if you happen to hard draw it, or if you do happen to have the ability to extend into it, then go nuts. But this card is really, really good when you can actually get it activated and resolved, and it's not the worst card to draw in the world. You know, it's perfectly fine. It's really easy discard fodder for a lot of your cards, and at the same time it's also a level 1 tuner, which has its own value. 2 Destiny heroes, as long as they satisfy the condition for Fusion Destiny, play whatever you want. I'm a big fan of these two, but you can play whatever 2 Destiny heroes as long as they fit the description of DPE, that's fine. Chaos Hunter. Chaos Hunter is a really powerful generic card. If your opponent special summons a monster, discard a card to special summon this out from your hand, and so long as this card is face up, your opponent cannot banish cards. That is perfect for the Runic matchup. It's a level 7, it is an easy summon, it does during your opponent's turn. Everything about this card is just amazing. I absolutely love this card right now. It stops some of the biggest names in the metagame. In fact, let me bring up the tier list so we can even have a demonstratable sort of little read for it. So in terms of the tier list, tier 1, Branded Despia, it stops Mirror Jade, it stops Branded Red, it stops Branded Banishment, it stops a whole bunch of things. Sword Soul Tenyi, it stops Shizao, it stops Taya, it stops a whole bunch of things. Adamantipator's, it stops them from summoning Block Dragon. Runic stops Runic dead, completely finished, done, finito. Lyralust Tri-Brigade, it prevents things like Revolt, I think it prevents Revolt, I would need to double check that. Drytron, I don't know its impact against Drytron or Pendulum Magician. Flounderize is an interesting one as well. I would need to know how that ruling plays out. But there you go, out of tiers 1 and 2, it stops all of the decks, or at least negatively impacts all of the decks that are currently tier 1 and 2. Really good, like it's just really solid. I'm a big fan of this card. I'm not going to gush about it all day though. We're playing 2 copies of Buster Blader. He's here for his name. Normally I would play 3, but the deck isn't consistent enough, so I think playing 2 is necessary. I don't really think you can get away with a 3rd one. We're playing 3 copies of the Ascendant of Thunder, just one of my favorite cards, to be honest. He's an easy free special summon, just pay 3,000 life points, put him out on the field. He's a level 7 non-tuner. He synergizes very well with your level 1 tuner engine. If you want to play Galaxy Tomahawk, he can also synergize with that as a level 7, but he's mainly just here as a free summon, essentially, as an effect monster. Vishuda is very much the same thing, although it holds a little bit of utility as well. Level 7 free special summon, but it can also link off into Monk of the Tenyi, and if you need to do that for whatever reason, sometimes being able to just bounce a card in your opponent's field back to the hand is pretty useful. So again, it's as simple as that really. Sometimes it's just useful. 1 for 1, can summon out either your Jet, your Buster Whelp, or your Dragon Buster Destruction Sword, basically just putting any of these cards into your graveyard for free. Love to see it. Fusion Destiny, because of course. Pot of Prosperity, you know, you're not always going to be using every package in your extra deck. Being able to dig through your deck for any singular card is often very useful. So Pot of Prosperity, definitely a very good card in this deck. The Double Memories, we played 2 just so we can use both of our fusion monsters, but it also makes it searchable off of Trap Trick, which is the last card we're talking about, which gives you access to any normal trap card in your deck as long as you have 2 copies of it. You banish one, you set the other. So that's an easy way to get in the Prologue. It means you're essentially playing 9 copies of Prologue, which is pretty good. But yeah, that does it for the main deck. The extra deck then is really self-explanatory. There's not very much to talk about, to be perfectly honest. Buster Blader the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman and Buster Dragon we've already talked about to death, so we're not going to talk about those anymore. Destiny Hero Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, everybody knows this card. Pop a card in your field, pop a card in theirs, come back every standby phase. Love to see it. Scarlet Red Dragon Archfiend is here specifically because it's a dark level 8 dragon synchro. That's it. It's only here for its attribute and level and type. So we can combine it with the likes of Jet Synchron in particular to go into the Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss. So the idea is that if you draw Jet and any of your easy summon level 7s, you can go into the Abyss by special summoning your level 7, normal summoning Jet, Synchro into Scarlight, then resummon Jet, and then Synchro into Abyss, which is essentially an Omni Negate for a face-up card. So really, really powerful play there. He's only here for that restriction. You could play a third Buster Dragon if you wanted to for that exact same reason. It's up to you. You totally could. There's no reason not to. I just like the variety. Plus, look at this card. He's cool. It's awesome. Void Ogre Dragon is another good option for that spot, but he's a UR and I don't have it. But yeah, we're not going to worry too much about that. Draco Berserker of the Tenyi, generic level 8 synchro. Play whatever you want. You can play Psyframe Lord Omega. If I had Omega, I would probably play Omega here. But Berserker's pretty good as well. The Abyss, again, easy summon off of Jet Synchron at any level 7, and it's an Omni Negate for a face-up card. It's also very useful in combination with your Buster Dragon, because during the end of the following turn after Prologue summons the Buster Dragon gets destroyed, so you might as well take advantage of it, being a level 8 Dragon Synchro, while you can to summon out your Abyss. So Abyss has that's why Abyss has always been in this deck, always to take advantage of that Buster Dragon, but in this particular variant it holds even more value because you can summon it off of the Jet Scarlight combo. Baron de Fleur, level 7 plus a level 3, you're playing Ash, things like that. It's just a generically good card. You don't use it very often in this particular version, so you could technically cut it if you wanted to. That's up to you. Linkuriboh is mandatory. You need to be able to put your level 1s in the grave. You might even want to play more copies of it, but you can usually recycle it from your grave. But yes, Linkuriboh is mandatory. Monk of the Tenyi is, I would say, mandatory if you're playing Vishuda. If you're not playing Monk, Vishuda gives you no more advantage than any other free special summon. But being able to go into Monk and bounce a card back to your opponent's hand is extremely useful, especially in a mirror game filled with, in a metagame filled with Mirror Jade. The Protector Whelp is the original sort of Buster Blader Link monster. Basically, on summon, it'll send a Destruction Sword card from your deck to the graveyard, so it fills the hole in your combo that you otherwise haven't filled. So if you're missing any given piece and you can't go into the full Prologue, this will plug that hole, so you can basically always resolve your Prologue successfully, so long as you can get it into your hand, first of all, and then put at least 2 monsters on your field, which isn't the most difficult thing in the world to do. Then the Verte Anaconda. Verte Anaconda, of course, just here specifically for Fusion Destiny. Of course it is. Nightmare Unicorn, generic Link monster, discard 1 to spin back the deck, and access Code Talker for when you're feeling like a degenerate OTK. And that's pretty much the deck. It's not that complicated. It's really simple. That's the thing about this particular version of it. It's really simple. You have very clear-cut objectives. You're trying the Prologue combo and DPE. That's number 1. If that doesn't work, you've also got the Jet to go into the Abyss. Feeling that, you've also got the Unicorn access code. So it's sort of like, here's your plan, right? There's your plan, Prologue DPE. That's number 1. But just in case you've got, that's the point of the deck. It's to give it that versatility, that sort of combat potential, combating against things in the metagame that the deck otherwise wouldn't be able to keep up with. I will likely refine this and post again in the near-ish future, because like I said, this is still a work in progress. I feel like this is getting on the right track of where the deck needs to move to adapt to the metagame, as opposed to where it was before. So I feel like we're on the right track. We just need to make sure that we're not steering too close in either direction. But yeah, that's pretty much everything. I'm not going to ramble up and take any more of your time. If you enjoyed watching, if you found this educational, helpful, I don't know, entertaining for whatever reason, then feel free to subscribe and like the video. Leave a comment down below for whatever you think about this deck list. If you feel like it's going in the right direction, if you've got suggestions, hints, I don't know, if you just like leaving comments, go ahead, tell me how your day was. Just leave whatever. Every wee bit of engagement helps. And please do, if you're watching this far and you haven't subscribed, why not? It's completely free. It doesn't affect you, really helps me out, and we're getting very, very close to our 1,000 target. And I'm gonna leave you with that. Thank you very much for watching this far, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye bye.